I think one thing that's been really valuable about this experience is just the conversations I've been able to have with some of the other centers, just sharing ideas and sharing some of the work that they do. You find a lot of people have commonalities in terms of projects that they're working on or ways that they came to solutions for problems that they were facing that you can apply either to your innovation or even other projects you're working on with your center, which has been really helpful. And it's a great way to learn about how other people are applying similar types of educational improvements, either in workshops or toolkits, and just how people are disseminating information and scaling their projects has been a really great learning experience.
And I would have to definitely agree, because I think that's one of the things whenever we have some of the face-to-face activities, I always come away with, a couple of really great ideas that help me in terms of my work as well as the work of our whole team.
Even just talking to some of the other centers, a lot of them have found collaborations in terms of sharing their best practices that I think wouldn't have happened otherwise had they not been part of this experience, in terms of, we heard you had a really great marketing plan. Could we take a look at it? It might be able to help us with our project, even though we work on completely different topics in very different arenas.
I would say too, one of the things that this particular Synergy conference that really will be helping us is that the suggestion was made to document what we're doing and to create a manual for some of our outreach activities so that we can use that manual to help with really disseminating the project to a broader audience. And so as much as we think we have a lot of the different flyers and forms to fill out and even just basic procedures, we don't really have it all together in maybe a manual that could be used to take our expos and use them in another institution or even another state. We were thinking about putting a manual together to be able to showcase how in fact we put our expos together. So I was wondering if you had any ideas as to what that manual might look like.
I think it'd be good if you took a lot of some of the concepts that we've learned here to really make it a virtual type of open source available document that you can send to other implementers, and to really make it something that is more flexible and adaptable. And I think a lot of the materials that we use right now and a lot of the consulting we do with our teams, we really work to be flexible to suit the situations that we come into. And I think that creating a manual that they can kind of work from to know our guidelines and our expectations would help us keep the core to our mission true.
I think one thing that I did learn as well, and I had to laugh a little bit about this, and that was to make sure that all of our files and documents are not PDF'd.
That was a huge aha. Don't send
we forgot about that.
PDF,
yeah,
because no one likes to copy and paste and reformat your work.
Right. So especially if you want to tailor it for your particular organization, you want to be able to make those edits and not have to try to figure out how to use full Adobe. So I think that was a real important piece of advice.
I think that there's an intrinsic realization that you need to be more trusting of the people that you're going to allow to use your materials.
Right.
And you have to let go of some of your branding and some of your dogmatic kind of hold on a structure or a procedure of doing something, and really let your adopters take the reins and adjust as it's going to fit them. Because ultimately, if they really understand your innovation, they're still going to keep it to its core.
Right. Well, then too, I think we learn from our adapters. They may come up with ideas and ways to implement some aspects of the expo that we haven't even considered. So it's a win-win for both of us.
And I think it might be good if you're looking to create a manual to maybe go back to some of your communities of practice and get their input and get their help in putting it together, because they may have some really good advice. They may have toolkits that they've put together themselves.
Let's talk a little bit about our expos and how we've been able to scale that project. And I'll go back a little bit to our first expo that was actually implemented in 2005. And again, the focus was on trying to introduce students and teachers and, quite honestly, even policymakers to manufacturing and how it's really changed for the 21st century. So at that time, we really were able to garner a lot of funds. We had a fairly new grant, but we also had a lot of support from industry as well as from some of our government agencies. And our original expo was a statewide expo. We had over 3,000 to 4,000 students who participated. It was a whole week. It was at the convention center, and companies literally would bring in, advanced manufacturing equipment that would become part of a series of pods that the students went through a simulated manufacturing process. So it was very labor intensive in terms of just the commitment of our educators, the students, but also just to organize that was huge. And at that time too, we also had a strong involvement of the Connecticut Business and Industry Association, so they really helped us pull in really companies throughout the state. And it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. So we've done 2 of that magnitude, but then came to the realization that it became very difficult just to get the commitment, especially even from the companies, because they really were taking about a week just to do the expo itself. And then we had planning before the expo was actually even implemented. So we said, we got to revisit what this expo is going to look like from funding and also ultimately from sustainability. So from there we decided that we would change the expo from a statewide outreach to something that was more regional, and now are offering the expos at a community college. Very similar format where we still have industry that will come in and set up a manufacturing process. But then also we have kind of like a trade show, so the students get to go through booths and talk to company representatives. And then we have a huge career piece where they also see, this is great, I like this manufacturing, but how can I get there? What type of education that I need? So that's really a little bit of the history and how it's changed. So I don't know if you want to pick up from there.
And I think what's an interesting thought about this is a lot of what influenced scaling this to a more regional model was really addressing cost and triability.
Exactly.
But in putting it into community colleges and bringing it to smaller communities, you actually are probably more effective at reaching students because they're so geared to being in classes that seeing a manufacturing expo in the context of college classrooms probably helps them relate to it a little bit better, which is something we haven't observed in our data yet. Our data has shown that the students do see that there's a pathway, and they do understand how the community colleges fit into the role of choosing careers in the STEM fields, particularly in manufacturing, which was the goal of our project.
Another unexpected outcome for us was that in as much as we really wanted the students to be able to come to a community college campus, because many of them haven't really been on a higher education campus, but also don't even know about community colleges. But what we didn't expect is that because now the colleges themselves were so involved in the planning and hosting of the expo, they had a true ownership of the event, from all the way from the president of the college to the deans and to the faculty and you name it. So that was really exciting for us, because when we did the statewide expo, people would come, but it was still, the Center's expo and CBIA's expo. But now, wow, this is, our community college's event. And we also were able to get local politicians to come in to see what this community college was doing in terms of the expo itself. And that is huge in terms of just what you can, how you can use those relationships to support your programs. And we didn't expect that, so we're excited about that.
It is, and when I worked on one of the expos, came from one of the community colleges, and we saw it as an opportunity to use it as a recruiting tool for our manufacturing program. And so we did take a really strong sense of ownership, and the result of it was, after a year, our manufacturing numbers in our department had actually doubled enrollment, and our manufacturing professor actually reported that most of his new students had attended one of the expos, and they got really excited and they wanted to see the equipment that they saw at the expo.